you have a lot of...
Oh no. What have I done? Okay. I got it figured out. Welcome to the live stream for July 11th, 2018. I am your host, Dana Morningstar. Hello. How is everybody doing? Deborah, new Chris, Cardia, Dora. Thank you, Dora. Slavic Princess, hello, hello. How is everybody's week going? Anything new and exciting? Grace is here. Daniel Ray, good deal. Hi. Good deal. Slavic Princess says, I am hanging in there to say the least. That it's always good to be hanging in there. So it's a good start. Welcome. Jay says, hi, first time visit. Looking forward to it. Very cool. Well, it's a totally different experience when you're here live. The chat can go pretty fast and I guess we'll just try to have fun with it, okay? Because it's something. Chris is gonna quit his job. That's exciting. Do you have another job lined up? Tanitria just finished her walk and run. So that's her therapy. Yeah, exercise is always can make us feel better, for sure. Great time to just clear our head and be in the moment. Evil Ed says, I love your podcast. Thanks for that feedback. I often wonder, my end goal, or just maybe the next goal, is to split up these videos into shorter videos, because I realize they're like epic length. So I know it's a lot to, for anybody to watch or listen to. So that is the plan, to condense them and to put out shorter videos and shorter podcasts. I just, I don't know, need to figure out how to make that happen. But I'm glad that you're enjoying everything so far. Grace is saying tonight has been a struggle. Well, what's going on, Grace? Oh, interesting. Missouri Cowboy sounds like he's been deep in thought. Says, week is going well. Been pondering the meanings of jealousy, envy, and covet. I was so confused on them. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, I'm curious, what kind of conclusions did you come to about all of that? Colleen says, hi, Dana. I could use some extra support. I went no contact for months, but he showed up at my door and I broke down. I realized how much I missed him, but can't let in because I know there's nowhere to go. So I guess I'm a little confused. Did you let him in? Is he back in your house, or did you hold your ground? And let me add to that too, that oftentimes we don't necessarily miss them. We miss the good times. We miss pieces of them, or we miss the fantasy of them, or kind of who we hoped that they could become. And I think sometimes kind of phrasing that to yourself in that way can help to just let go and move forward. Because there were a lot of great things about the problematic people in my life too that I had a hard time letting go of. But I think when I realized that it was like I needed to focus on the complete package instead of kind of piecing things apart. and to really see them clearly and realize, I missed the fantasy. I missed the good times, but the bad times were so bad that, or were such a problem that was just an instant deal breaker. Staying busy. I'm a big fan. You've probably heard me talk about like meetup groups and, um, filling that void that they left, or figuring out like, what about them do you actually miss? Is it their sense of humor? Is it their level of intelligence? Is it the conversation? And then trying to find that in other areas in your life that are healthier. Slavic Princess says, would you mind giving me a description on how to apply gray rock with an inverted narcissist? I'm actually referring to a narcissist that, although tries to play the hero. It's the same across the board. And you just basically act completely unreactive. So you don't share. I think it's like once you realize that a person is emotionally unsafe in some way, shape, or form, you just kind of pull that back. So you're not having conversations, you're not sharing everything with them that you would with another person. I like to think of it as you're kind of keeping your conversation at the level that you would have with a stranger in an elevator, basically. It's really brief, it's polite, it's just to the point. You're not getting into anything of real depth. It's just surface level kind of stuff, because there's no, there's no point to go any deeper than that, because it's just not going to end well. Justin, that's a good question, asks, is it possible for someone to have narcissistic traits and codependent traits simultaneously? Yeah, yes, but it's if a person is more on like that, the side of the spectrum where it's all about them, so they're more on like that narcissistic side of the spectrum, a lot of the codependent type traits, like, I guess here's the way I look at it. It's like, if you think about it in terms of a spectrum, like a spectrum of self-orientation, okay? And on one side, you have more codependency, which I view as more of like overgiving. So the self-orientation is very much about others. And narcissism, that self-orientation, is all about overtaking. And it's all about this kind of, extreme problematic degree of selfishness. So what's interesting is I think a lot of narcissists do tend to identify as like empaths or codependent, because in their mind, we all view reality through our own lens, right? So for a narcissist, they really view like everything should be all about me all of the time. And if it's not, if somebody tries to set boundaries or limits or tells them no, these kinds of things, they feel victimized, because they continually rationalize their behavior and they justify their mistreatment of others, because it's just all about them all of the time. So I think in their mind, it's more of, they just don't see their own behavior. They might feel like, oh, I give and I give and I give. You see this a lot with people that have been convicted of crimes, right? Or like just abusive people in general. If you ask them like, well, why did you do that? They'll tell you like, oh, well, no, you made me do that. It's the whole proverbial, like, look at what you made me do. And so in their mind, they feel justified and entitled to treat people however they want to treat them. And they get upset when there's consequences. They're shocked. Like, well, what do you mean you won't loan me money anymore? Like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. I haven't paid you back the $1,000 I borrowed before, but hey, you should loan me money because we're family, or we're married, or we're whatever. Like, they just don't see their behavior in things. It's just always about, so whenever people set boundaries with them, they get upset about that. So I guess it depends on kind of what you're talking about in terms of kind of like codependent what kind of I guess I should ask, what kind of codependent behavior are you seeing in them? Because a lot of times that narcissism, the kind of, I want to put this in parentheses, like fear of abandonment, the always needing other people, that kind of stuff it can exist on either side of that spectrum. But codependent people tend to have more of a mindset of like, it's not like codependent people, it's more of looking to other people for validation, for them to complete us, for relationships to make us whole, that our emotions are very dependent upon the relationships we have in our life and our significant other. We tend to need to feel needed. We put everybody else first and ourselves last. So that kind of stuff you don't find with narcissists. So they might have some of that. I mean, you're not going to find people pleasing, like you're not going to find, unless it's insincere, you know? So I don't know. I'll be curious to see if you can elaborate on that a little bit more. Okay, Jay says, do they do things they do knowingly, or do you think that they twist it? Mine could never put himself in my shoes and see it my way. I think it can be both, or either, I should say. Because every person is different. I guess let's just start there. Every single person is different. So just because a person's a narcissist, or they have some certain type of behavior, like it's going to come out in that individual way because they're an individual. So kind of blanket statements of all narcissists do X, Y, and Z, or all narcissists, whatever, that they all cheat, or that they all steal, or that they all, do whatever it is they do. That's not always the case. Like their behavior is very individualized. And it's like that. It's like I said, it's like that way with any of us, personality disordered people included. So I think, so I guess what I'm saying is like, there's a level of self-awareness there. Like some narcissists are a lot more self-aware about their behavior. Some are, intelligent, some not so much. Some are incredibly charming, others not at all. Some are, very malicious and self-aware. Like they know exactly what they're doing and they're intentionally trying to destroy someone and erode their reality because they enjoy that. So some are malicious and sadistic, some are not. Some are just have a blinding degree of selfishness and like they're completely clueless about their behavior. But I guess the way that I look at it is any way you want to dice it, you lose. Like you're never going to be able to work as a team with somebody who's got any of that behavior. Either they know what they're doing and it's malicious and it's sadistic and it's intentional, or they're completely unaware that they're doing it. But either way, like they're not going to be motivated to change because either they know what they're doing and they are okay with what they're doing, or they don't know what they're doing, but trying to get through to them is not getting very far either. So it's kind of a no-win situation. Okay. Let's see here. Hey, George. George is here. Let's see. Scrolling through the comments here. Faith says, Dana, I need some advice on how to talk to my children after my narcissistic boyfriend that lived with us for years just left us and I've gone no contact. The kids are 14, 12, and 6. Well, the 12-year-old and the 14-year-old are old enough that they're going to be able to like better articulate kind of how they're feeling, because odds are they probably feel hurt and abandoned and confused. So I guess I would just start by sitting down and just saying, hey, you know what, so and so left, and I was just wondering if you guys wanted to talk about it or how you felt about it, and see kind of what they say. And you might get further if you maybe talked about it one-on-one, like maybe went for a walk with each child or went out for a soda or something. The 6-year-old, you could also possibly start that conversation of, so and so's not here anymore, and how are you feeling about that? And then just kind of listening and validating, and just letting them know like it's okay to feel the way that you feel. And you know so I think just opening the conversation up about how are they feeling, and that they can always come to you if they want to talk about things, and that you're there for them, and that if they're hurting, that you're sorry that they're hurting. And um, yeah. But yeah, and realistically, that's not going to be obviously just like a one-time conversation. That'll probably be more of like an ongoing conversation that you have. But I think it can help to just kind of leave that door open of it's okay, guys. Like you guys can talk to me about this, and you don't need to feel like you need to protect me, or that this conversation's off limits. Like if you have any questions, and then answering those questions, in an age appropriate way, and just letting them know like we're going to be okay, we're going to move forward. I'm sorry that you guys had to go through that, and it's not going to happen again. So okay, let's see, let me scroll up. Yeah, that's Beth. That's a good point. She says, yes, I talked to my 17-year-old. We hug and cry together, but you must talk because of the damage that the narcissist does. Therapy can be good right away. Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. But I think just keeping communication open and it can go a long way. Slavic Princess says, yes, narcissists have such a fascinating yet tragic personality disorder. Yes, it really is. I mean, it's one of those, I think that's one of the hardest things for people to kind of detach from, is it's generally unlike something we've ever come across before. And even if we have come across it, they all come across in such different ways that the problematic person, the narcissistic person we came across, 5 years ago, or, whatever, might be very different than the one that we currently have in our life. And so there's just kind of this like weird fascination of how do they think about the world, and like why do they not understand this, and like what do they really mean, and what does this mean, and there's just so much confusion surrounding all of their behavior and all of just everything. I totally get it. I have a hard time too when I've had a few kind of slide under my radar, in the past handful of years. And it's the same thing where I'm able to detach a lot faster, but there's still kind of that fascination of where I just kind of want to sit back and watch them, and knowing what I know now, like just kind of observe that thought process. But I can't stay, I can't stay in that for very long, because it's just so toxic, you know? I think that's one of the challenges that most survivors of this kind of stuff have is kind of letting like walking away from a situation when there's so many questions that are just never going to be answered, and then moving forward, and then just not looking back. I think I've mentioned before, one of the best pieces of advice that I got was from a friend of mine This was years ago, and I was staying with her shortly after my breakup with the first real narcissist in my life, and I was just so confused and upset, and like was just rehashing events and just trying to figure out what on earth happened and how I got caught up with somebody like this and just all of it. And if I should have tried harder, if things could have been different, like just all of like, how did he move on so quickly? How does that happen? Like, how do I go from being a big part of your life to nothing in like 5 seconds flat? It was just, I had not experienced something like that before. And she finally told me, she's like, you know what, Dana, you just need to close the door and not look back. And she was just this real no nonsense Irish woman. And she'd gone through her own stuff. Her father had upped and left her mother. I think they had 7 or 8 children that were all under the age of 10. And this was in Ireland. And at the time that they didn't have any, like, there was no social assistance. So here's her mother working multiple, probably 2 or 3 jobs to try to support all of these kids. And she had a real hard knock life. And, she's like, you shut that door and you focus on what you got to do and you put your head down and you do it. Then that's how you get through it. And there's a lot to that. Okay, let's see. People are talking about vegetarian, going vegan. Yeah, I was vegan for a while. That's something that I really would like to get back to. I feel for starters, it's a lot easier for me to keep the weight off when I'm vegan, and I feel it's just more in alignment with everything about me, I guess. So, but it can be difficult to go vegan, especially if you want to go have dinner parties or go out to restaurants and stuff. And there's just a lot of changes. So yeah, definitely going vegetarian can be a lot easier. I think you'll be surprised as to, like, you don't really have to make that many changes when you go vegetarian. You just order stuff without meat on it. So people always ask me that whenever we go out to eat. They're like, well, I don't know what you're going to be able to eat. I'm like, pretty much the same thing as you. I just don't eat the meat part of it. Pretty much a non-problem. But good luck with that. It's a journey for sure. I think another interesting part of that journey is when you start changing up your diet, whatever diet you're on, whatever eating plan, I should say, way of eating that you're on, is different food cravings and things like that start to come to your attention. And that's always very interesting. So always interesting, kind of that whole self-exploration thing. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Marilyn says, my life is so shattered financially, emotionally, mentally. I am struggling to even focus on paying bills on time and so on. How do I keep myself together? My life is so full of fear. Oh, Marilyn, I can so relate to that. I think something that can help with that is realizing that you're not always going to feel this way, that this too shall pass. It really, really will. And you know what? If bills get paid late, then they get paid late. And if your house isn't as clean as you normally like, then it's not as clean as you'd normally like. Like there's certain things when a person is that stressed out, like it can be really difficult to do kind of day-to-day tasks. But I think if you just realize it's okay, like you do the best you can do, ideally set up as much as you can on like bills and stuff on auto pay. to where you don't have to think about it. It just automatically comes out of your account every month. Kind of giving yourself a schedule might help. So if you're having trouble kind of tracking time, which a lot of people tend to have when they're incredibly stressed out, like the days all blur together, and the next thing they know, they're like, oh my goodness, I haven't showered all weekend, or like, how is it, July 11th already? They're just kind of in this time warp because they're just lost in their own head. Kind of setting up a schedule of, okay, I'm going to water the plants and check the mail on Wednesday, or I'm going to clean the house to some degree every Friday. Start kind of getting a schedule for yourself that'll help you to kind of focus on this, each little task at a time. And again, like if you can leverage that stuff, getting bills on auto pay, and then I guess too, just being compassionate with yourself. And it's like, okay, you know what? You've been through an awful lot, and it's just going to take a little while for you to get back to a place where you can just breathe. And I guess also on that note, one of the things that the biggest realizations that I had back then, I was going through so freaking much. I mean, I don't know if I could have been going through much more than I was going through. It was just coming at every single angle. And I remember just laying there and feeling like I really wasn't sure what was going to happen to me. Like if I was going to have a breakdown or a breakthrough, or if I was just going to simply break. Like I really didn't know how any of this was going to turn out. And that was terrifying to just feel so like a sheet in the wind. And one of the realizations I had was the only thing that I knew for certain is that I would never look back on that I would never look back on that time in my life and think to myself, boy, I really wish I would have worried about that more. And kind of having that realization really helped to set me free of, you know what, this was going to pass. This will pass. And it feels really intense and really immediate now, but like worrying about it, being stressed out, getting so upset, all of this stuff isn't going to change anything, and it's not helping any. And I'm not going to look back in 6 months from now or 6 years from now and think, boy, I really wish I would have worried about things more. Just knowing that, it was like, okay, I'm going to do what I can do. And then I'm just going to let the rest go, because that's all any of us can ever do. So I think the biggest thing right now for you is to try to get I think the most compassionate thing that you can do for yourself right now, and the most important thing that you can do for yourself right now, is to get yourself out of fear. So getting grounded, making time to have fun, which that might seem like you're a million miles away from wanting to have fun, but making time to go have fun, do something that's enjoyable, whatever that might be: gardening, going for a walk, watching a comedy, playing with your dog, giving yourself a pedicure, whatever might be enjoyable for you, making time for that. That's the tricky thing, I think, with stress and anxiety, is it can make us feel like we don't have time for anything fun, anything enjoyable. We've got to just focus on all of the stress. And then as soon as the stress passes, then down the road, someday when everything's back to some degree of manageability, then we can have fun and start enjoying life. But I will tell you, the more you can bring that stuff in now, like don't wait. Carve out time for yourself to relax and to find things that are enjoyable. There's tons of videos out there on YouTube that are like guided imagery and relaxation. Two of my favorite people that have channels about this. One guy is Jason Stevenson, and then another guy, his name is Michael Seeley. And I think they're both fantastic. So that might be worth checking out, and giving yourself that time, like tripling up on your self-care during this. If you're feeling that level of like frenzy, anxiety, stress, triple up on that self-care. And so at night, giving yourself that treat of, you know what, I'm going to go listen to one of these videos from these guys for 20 minutes and just let myself wind down. And it's great because all you have to do is just hit play and you just lay there. Like, it doesn't require any energy or any effort. You don't have to get yourself into a certain mood. You just have to hit play. You will get through this. These feelings are not always going to be this intense, and they won't last forever. They really won't. Just take it a day at a time. Just a day at a time. A day at a time. Grace says, I've been doing self-care for a long time now. You know, and that's good. And honestly, I think it's something that we really need to incorporate into something that we do every day. It's just as important as taking a shower and brushing our teeth and, you know, the basics of everything else we do. It's just so important. It's just part of taking care of yourself. And I think so many of us have for so long put everybody else in front and ourselves and our wants and needs in the back, that self-care feels like a luxury. And it isn't. It's really a necessity. It's how we just kind of nurture and nourish ourselves and keep ourselves, just take care of ourselves. It's just about taking care of yourself. And it doesn't have to cost money. It doesn't have to be super time intensive. You know, I'd mentioned before, one of the things that I did that really helped was just turning my phone off. I started turning my phone off. I forget, like probably nine, because I tend to go to bed pretty early, but like I turned my phone off at 9 and I told everybody else, I'm like, you know what, I'm just turning my phone off. And it gave me a chance to breathe and make that my time. And then I would spend that time reading. So little things like that. Tuning into yourself. Like, what do you need right now? Maybe it's watching less news. Maybe the news is really upsetting to you. So just taking a technology or news break for the next week or two when you're feeling really anxious, switching from regular coffee to decaf, allowing yourself to sleep in on the weekends. You know, so many things. Jay says, having motivation is hard. Yes. Yeah, it can be. It definitely can be. Yes. And George was saying, yes, prioritizing is a good habit. If you have a priority to spend the day to yourself, then that's the priority. Everyone else can wait or do it themselves. Yep. You know, and I have found that most people are very understanding because you're not asking them. You're just telling them, you know, like, you don't need to get their permission to turn your phone off or to go to bed an hour early. I mean, that's the cool thing about being an adult, right? So like we can just do these things. And it is nice when you make yourself a priority and you just tell other people, hey, you know what? I'm going to spend the day writing, or I'm going to go to bed early, or whatever it is that you're going to do. And like they have kind of no choice but to agree with that, because you're not asking them, you're just letting them know what's going to happen. I'd also add to that, if you're really feeling like at a low place, it can help if you've got other people in your life that want to support you, but they don't know how, letting them know what you need from them, which can be incredibly uncomfortable for us who are not used to asking for help. but saying, hey, you know what, I'm going through a hard time right now. And it would be really great if, like, do you mind if I call you on Saturday? Or if they ask, what they can do for you, hey, what would be really helpful is helping teach me how to set up auto pay for my bills. Or it would be really helpful if, maybe could you come over and help me just prepare some meals for the week? Something like that, like getting specific. 'Cause a lot of people don't know how to help. And if they want to help, then that can kind of give them some direction. Okay, let me scroll up here. That's so true, Bill. Bill says it's all about self-recovery. You got lost in somebody else and now you have to find yourself again. It all takes time. Yes, it really does. And it's a process, and it can, I think it's like any other learning curve. Like, it can be so frustrating at times, and it can be discouraging. But then when pieces start to come into place and you start kind of getting the hang of things, it can be exciting, it can be exhilarating, it can just really take you to the next level. It's just kind of hanging in there and kind of keeping that growth mindset of, I'm just going to keep learning and I'm going to keep applying. And it's just all about progress and not perfection, because it is about growth is very rarely a straight line. It's a very messy, it's a very messy process. Uh, Slavic Princess says, Dana, what was your strategy to heal from all the narcissistic abuse that your exes put you through? And what exactly was your strategy to succeed as an author and life coach? Well, that's a big, that's a big question. I guess first and foremost, I don't consider myself to be a life coach. I didn't start any of this to be a life coach. Um, I started my YouTube channel after I started connecting the dots. I don't even remember how I somehow stumbled into a Facebook group on this topic, and all of the pieces just began coming together for me. And then it was just this, like, like, oh my, like everything just began making sense. And so then it was this feeling of, I felt this need to share my aha moments and like what I was learning with other people. I didn't expect anybody, didn't expect anybody to really watch my videos. I went about it thinking, like, I'm going to make a bunch of videos. And if you watch all my earlier videos, I mean, they were all filmed on like an iPhone 4. There was no microphone. They were, you know, just me sitting in my kitchen talking. So I put all those out, hoping that they would find the people that needed to find them. And then people began, people began messaging me, but I was so new to, like, even understanding YouTube, let alone being like a YouTuber, that it just didn't register. I don't know. Like, I totally did not know what I was doing. So then I began hearing from more and more different people. And then that really impacted my message and how I understood everything. Because I was only understanding things through my lens, which was as a former domestic violence advocate and a psychiatric nurse, and then as a woman who had gone through this. So I didn't understand what men were going through or what had gone through. I didn't understand. There was just a lot of like facets of abuse that I did not understand. And so then, I mean, that was kind of the benefit of YouTube, is people will let you know. So I was getting a lot of feedback from people that were like, hey, what about us? Or, hey, you didn't mention this, or hey. And then that really, it just opened my eyes to things in new ways that I don't think ever would have been possible. And so, and I think same thing with being an author. Like I've always really enjoyed writing. I've always wanted to write about my story, which I really haven't done yet. I've started to, but like I'm not sure how that's all going to take shape. But I wrote some books and then put them out there and had to kind of figure out that whole process. Um, but I am, it's been like a solid 7 years since the first relationship, and about 5 or so, I don't know, I'm terrible with time, about 5 or so years since the second. Uh, and it wasn't just like one thing that I think helped me heal. It was a series of things. I mean, like there was just so much that helped me. The book, The Power of Now, helped me tremendously with just staying in the moment. That was one of the things that I like with what Marilyn was talking about earlier. Like I was so fearful. I just can so relate to that. I was so terrified of like, what is going to become of me? How am I going to move forward? On any level, and just feeling so profoundly broken, and, not knowing who to trust, not trusting myself. I felt ashamed. I felt stupid. I felt embarrassed that I got caught up in this, and then I got caught up in it twice. That like, I mean, financially, my life was a mess. Emotionally, it was a mess. Like just across the board, it was a mess. It was a mess. It was a mess. But, like, I think one of the realizations, I mean, there's so many different realizations that I had over those years. One was with the whole thing of like, you're never going to look back at this moment and wish you would have worried about things more. Like do what you can do and then just let the rest go. Like it will all shake out. That was a big one. The other one was making the agreement with myself that I was not going to let this end my life. Like at that point in my life, I was still really kind of flirting with the idea of suicide. I thought about it a lot, and I was really, really low for a very long time. And so just the realization of, you know what, I just need to take that off the table. Like I need to not let this end my life. And then the second realization was, okay, I need to not let this destroy my life. And then the third realization was, I need to somehow use this, what happened to me, for my highest and greatest good. I need to be able to squeeze out as much as I possibly can for this and make this work for me. And then the fourth realization was down the road, I vowed to myself, I'm like, I'm going to make what happened to me work for the highest and greatest good of others. And kind of setting those intentions, those 4 intentions, it gave me something to steer into. Whereas before, I just felt like I was lost at sea and I didn't know what direction I was heading. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I didn't know any of that. So kind of giving myself a direction really helped. So many other I actually just finished, by the way, reading my book, the Start Here book. Let me get it. My Start Here book. I'm turning it into an audio book, and I'm going to be splicing it up and making different parts of the chapters into videos. So there's a whole section in here. I forgot that I even had it in here. Chapter 10 is a bunch of strategies with how to move forward. And there's probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 different strategies. So I'll just share some of these with you. This is like things that really helped me that I think are universal. I think they help everybody. But I mean, obviously you need to be the judge of it, but I think this can apply to anybody. Number 1 is releasing the hope of ever getting closure from them, giving yourself closure. And whether that means writing yourself a letter and then, or I should say, writing a letter to them, letting them know everything, like just cussing them out, letting them know how you feel, how disappointed you are, how just disgusted you are, all of that, and then burning it. And you might decide to have like a closure, like a cleansing type party, or you could do it yourself where you have other people, supportive people over, and you decide to gather up any items that remind you of this person, or just remind you of kind of this time in your life that you're ready to let go of. You can take all that into your fireplace or whatnot and burn it. uh, Doing a like change the energy party if you've got people over while they're there, doing a change the energy party. So let's say, for example, especially if you're in the same place, it can be so heavy to come home and you're walking into this house that holds so many memories. And so if you can trying to change the energy in that environment, moving furniture. And again, none of this stuff has to cost any money, and it doesn't. If it does cost money, it doesn't have to cost you a lot. You can go to Michael's or Target and get some different artwork, or you can go to Michael's and get some canvas and paint your own artwork for your house. So making inspiring artwork. And I think it's at a friend's house, I had what I made my Buddha board. That's what I called my Buddha board uh, during this time. And it was seriously like a piece of foam board. And I took a permanent marker and I wrote down a lot of sayings, many of which were from The Power of Now, that I wanted to steer into. So like making the present moment your friend was one of them. What were some other ones? I don't know. There was, detach. Like just detach from the fantasy, detach from being in the moment, like detaching from all the clinging and the clinging to like what I hoped could be, and the craving of what I thought was. Just detaching from that and just being in the moment, those kinds of things. And I had that foam board and I had it hung up I had a little sunroom. So I saw it every single morning, and it just helped to set my mindset into a good place. If you can get new sheets or a new pillowcase. During this time, I designated a color. My color was red. Well, one of the aha moments that I had was I was getting out of the shower one day and I was just feeling bad. I was just upset. And I'm like, what's wrong? Like, why am I so unlovable? Like, I feel like I'm a decent person with a lot to offer, and I don't get it. Like, and I just was so hurt, and it was just kind of the realization of, like I needed to love me. Like if nobody else is going to do it, then I'm going to do it. And then it was kind of like, well, that's kind of weird that I don't love me. And then so that was just kind of like that first spark that, hey, maybe there's something more behind that. And then realizing I need to love me. Like I had been looking for a very long time, looking outside of myself for other people to make me feel loved and validated and worthy. And because of that, I had found myself in a series, there'd been a peppering of like friendships, quote unquote friendships and relationships, where I had found myself in a scramble. I was continually being mistreated because I was trying to earn their love or their loyalty or their honesty or their respect. And I just was so off track with all of that, and that kind of stuff starts from within. So anyways, so I designated a color. My color is red. And that was going to be my color to remind myself that I loved me. And so I went out to Walmart, because I lived in a little tiny town in New Mexico, and that was like the only store we had within probably like a 60-mile radius. Was the only real place you could go to buy towels. Anyways, so I went to Walmart, bought some red towels. So every time I would get out of the shower, I'd wrap myself up in a red towel and kind of just give myself a hug. And that was just my way of just anchoring myself into like, I care about me. I love me. And so there's a lot of, so then I got excited about that. I'm like, this is really interesting. This whole like learning to love myself, and like, what does that mean? And how does a person do that in a way that's not seemingly so gross and self-absorbed, anyways, so I began telling friends about this. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. And this is my color. And then people began giving me like little red things. Like somebody's like, oh, just little tchotchke stuff that was red. And it was just that reminder of, I love that. I have a lot of friends that started doing that. They're like, you know what? I have a friend that's like, her color is orange. And so she bought herself, after her divorce, orange sheets and an orange pillowcases, and just ran with that. So kind of designating a color to anchor yourself. Let's see, what else do I have in here? The 4 decisions that I mentioned earlier about that you're going to use this for your highest and greatest good, and that you're not going to let this end your life. Not waiting until you're fully healed to start enjoying your life again. So getting out there. I'm a big fan of the website meetup.com. I think it's fantastic. It can be a really great way to go meet new people and do new things, and just get back into life again. It's free. It's not a dating website. Highly recommend it. Developing a mantra. So that can be a word or a phrase. I still do this all the time. Like, whatever kind of resonates with you where you are, and you can pick a new one every single day. You could have a handful of different ones. You could pick a new one every week or every month. Just something that kind of anchors you and gives you something to steer into. So one of mine, especially early on, was the best revenge is a good life. So when I found myself feeling anger at a level that I didn't ever even know was inside me, it was such a scary level of rage was what it was, at just feeling so victimized and silenced. Like there was nothing, like there's just not, what do you do? Like there's nothing that I could do. And I'm like, I don't even know how to handle this. And so I began pouring all of that anger into something positive, a bunch of things that were positive: cleaning out my car, cleaning out my closet, doing jumping jacks, going for a walk, playing with my dog, cooking a nourishing meal, learning to cook a different recipe, anything and everything that was something remotely positive, I would just jump on it, because I thought, I can't let this anger sink me, and it definitely, or make me do something crazy, because I was just beside myself. Like I did not know like what I was gonna do, because I was just so enraged. So that really helped. Feeding your brain is a big one. Paying attention to, if you're already feeling overwhelmed and fearful and anxious, this is not the time to watch Lifetime TV movies. It's not the time to be watching the news. Anything that contributes to making you feel anxious or depressed, you kind of want to stay away from. Comedies can be really good. Documentaries on, jellyfish, like totally different things, right? Like documentaries on, I don't know, weight loss, stuff that's just not related to what you're currently going through. Practicing picking up and putting down emotions was another big one. And this, if you've watched any of my videos, I'm like really big into Buddhism. And one of the concepts that I got from The Power of Now that I really enjoyed is he talked about kind of getting to that place where we are this stillness. Like if you think about the ocean, like the top of the ocean is waves, and it's very temperamental, and it just depends on all these other outside factors. And so many of us live our life at the top of the ocean on those waves, and we're just at the mercy of all these other events that are going on. And that's a really hard way to live. And he talks about bringing yourself into this deep level of stillness, like the deep part of the ocean where it's just cold, or it's just quiet and calm, and it's just peaceful. And so bringing yourself down to that place of like a deep sense of peace, and realizing that you can do that was huge. So I'd mentioned before in different videos, like thinking about emotions as something tangible, like a ball or like a backpack, something that you carry that you can put on and take off. that you don't have to carry that. Like, you are not the anger, you are not the depression, you are not the fear. Like, these are emotions. You are like the deep stillness behind all of that. That's your natural state of being, is not that. These emotions, they come and go, kind of like clouds in the sky. And so practicing observing the emotions and detaching from them and realizing that you are not the emotions, that they, if you can imagine yourself like laying on a hill, like a grassy hill on a nice day, and you're watching clouds kind of form and then they dissipate and they move on. Like, that's these emotions. They surface, they take shape, and then they dissipate. And so realizing that even though you have these really intense emotions, that you can set them down, making a concerted effort to do that. So if you do decide to go onto YouTube and watch some comedy or watch a documentary or whatnot, just tell yourself, okay, anxiety, okay, fear, I'm going to go watch this documentary and I'm going to allow myself to enjoy doing that. So I'm just going to put you down, because your brain's not going to like this, okay? I'm just going to put you down. You're going to sit right here, right next to me, okay? And we're just going to watch this. And then if you need me to, I can pick you back up and I can put you back on. Realizing that you're in control of that and that it's okay, you're still safe if you put those emotions down, can be very, very liberating. It's just so interesting being able to detach from your emotions like that and realizing that you are not them. Okay, so getting a makeover of some kind might be dyeing your hair, cutting your hair, doing your makeup a little different. The benefit to this, it can really feel like you're just shedding an old skin, and you see somebody different in the mirror when you do this. And it's amazing how powerful that can be. It just feels so transformative of like, okay, I'm leaving all this old stuff behind and I'm moving into this next chapter in my life. That was powerful. Again, box of hair dye, $10. Or even a new lipstick. It's something. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but it can make a real impact. Getting rid of triggering objects, we kind of talked about that. Like, you can box those up. You can, if you're not ready to donate them or throw them away or burn them, I would encourage you to put any triggering objects, put them in a box. If you have a garage or an attic or even a closet, put them away so you're not having to see them every single day. And also the whole thing with like creating art and making your space your own. If you have kids, this can be something fun for them to do as well. So like I said, going to Michael's, getting poster board, getting butcher block paper, telling them, hey, I really feel like let's make this space our own. I thought it'd be fun to do some artwork. So let's do that. You can go on Pinterest, you can go on Google and just kind of get some inspiration for different ideas for painting or whatnot, and then just put all that up around your house and make that space everybody's again. Surrounding yourself with people who get it and people who support you, that's huge. So it can be really exhausting trying to continually explain yourself to people who want to argue about it, who tell you to get over it, who tell you that they don't get it, or they minimize it, or they say, oh, well, kind of like, what's your part in things, or making it seem that it was a relationship issue and not more of like an individual issue. And then I would say to reframing and understanding your concept of the pain that you're currently in. This was another really big one for me. Is I spent so much time trying to run from the pain because, pain is uncomfortable. So I was like, I don't want to be in pain anymore. I want to get out of this pain. I just want to get back to who I was. And so I guess there's two different realizations that I had with that. So then the realization of, I just want to get back to who I was. That, I think this is one of the biggest things that keeps people stuck. Life is about growth, and growth is always about moving forward. It's never about moving backwards. It's never about being who we used to be. So you have to really kind of change your understanding of what it means to heal. It's it's not, there is no going back to the old you, but that doesn't have to be a negative thing. It really doesn't. It can be an exciting, empowering new thing, because now you are at the place where you can consciously choose who you want to be. And all of us have had these lives where they've been built up based on like expectations of others, based maybe outdated expectations of ourselves. These whole lives of like shoulda, coulda, woulda, and maybe belief systems of our parents or other people or whatnot. When a person goes through a relationship like this, where your whole life is just reduced to rubble in every way, shape, and form, you're at that kind of almost sacred place of you get to rebuild. And I totally get how it can be this massive, overwhelming undertaking to do. But the beauty of it in this is now you start getting to rebuild, and you can consciously choose piece by piece what you want to rebuild with. And so you can start rebuilding a life that you love. So that's huge. But okay, so back to the pain, reframing your understanding of the pain. If you can understand that the pain that's associated with all of this, it can be incredibly overwhelming and unbearable at times, but every emotion that you experience, especially many of the negative ones, they all have a message for you, and they're all designed to keep you safe. They're all working on your side. And even though it doesn't feel like it, it just feels like, no, I feel like shredded, blown apart inside. It's a terrible, terrible feeling. That pain has a really important message for you. It has many messages for you. I think one of the biggest messages is an understanding that to stay away from people who cause you this level of pain. So this is not for you. People that cause you this kind of pain and mental anguish and grief and hurt, avoid them. It's like touching a hot stove. Thank goodness that we experience pain when we touch a hot stove, because we learn the lesson of don't touch a hot stove. When we get out of these kinds of relationships and we have pain, it's a good thing that we experience pain, so we can learn that lesson of don't be around people that hurt you this way. If we didn't experience pain, we wouldn't have that ability to learn that lesson. And of course, keeping in mind that during all of this, it can feel like a hit and run accident. Like, no, I don't know if there's any lessons to learn. This happened to me. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't see it happening, or this person was living a double life. It can feel like there's not a whole lot there to learn, but please trust me in this, that there's hundreds of things that you can squeeze out of this, that you can learn about yourself. And I mean, like I'd mentioned, like understanding your emotions, understanding that you can rebuild your life piece by piece, learning to love yourself, learning what it means to practice self-care on a daily basis. So many, like there's these core things that we tend to learn from these things. And then there's like these outer rings. It's like this ripple effect that keeps going and going and going. It's just a powerful, there's so much like a power and amazingness that can come out of this. There really, really is. That was a very long answer. I hope that answered your question. Okay. Ooh, that is a good title. Up Yours, Narc says, Dana, The Messages of Pain. That's a great title for one of your books. That is a really good title. It's funny that you should mention that. I was, I'm working on my next book, and it's the working title of it right now is called The Narcissist's Playbook. I might change it. I like the title, but I don't know if it's captures, I don't know if it's going to work for the book or not, but I've been thinking a lot. Anyways, so I was working on this book, and it's all about manipulation and different manipulation strategies and how to overcome that. And I was thinking about the book, The Gift of Fear, from the Gavin de Becker book, which is a fantastic book. And I was thinking about that today, and I was like, I think a better title for that book would have been called The Gift of Confusion, because he talks about all these different situations and kind of, our intuition and paying attention to when something's off. If something feels off, it's because it's off. And it's not necessarily those things register as fear, but it registers as confusion. But not as powerful of a title as The Gift of Fear. But I like that. The Messages of Pain. I need to write that down. That is a really... Messages of Pain. I like it. Graceful says, is there a way? Gosh, hold on. My nose itches. It's cat hair. Cats love to set up shop in my office here, and not allergic to them, but just cat hair floating around in here. Graceful says, is there any way we can get a local support group where we can get together in person and build friendships? I know I need real friends, real people in my life other than YouTube. You can, I have thought about how to possibly do something like this. Let me run it past my different admins and see what they have to say. I know that there's a couple group, I've seen a few like local meetup groups about this topic. You can always, anybody can always start their own meetup group. The only thing, I think it's like $55 a year or something if you end up doing that. The only thing that I would caution you against is it's really important that people understand that these types of groups, support groups in general, can tend to attract a lot of the wrong people. And not only that, but just because somebody has been abused doesn't mean that they were ever healthy to begin with. And it doesn't mean that they are your kind of people. So it's just having a healthy set of boundaries at all times is necessary. What I have found, myself included, with support groups, people get in there and they're so excited to feel validated and to meet other people that have gone through something like this that they instantly drop all their boundaries because they feel so heard for the first time in a long time, if not ever. So it's just important that we kind of just proceed with caution, realize this is the only thing that we know we have in common with this person, and we don't know them. So to move slowly. Just something to kind of keep in mind. Let me think about that. Is George still in the chat? I think he is. He's one of the admins from my website group. And then we've got a handful of admins who are from the Facebook group. I don't think they're on here tonight, but we'll have to we can brainstorm something. I think it's, for me to set something up, it's going to be more of a time and a strategy kind of thing. I don't mind doing it. I just, I feel like I've been kind of overcommitting and under delivering, and I don't like it when I do that. So I just want to make sure I'd be able to actually do what I say I can do. You're welcome, Grace. Grace says, by the way, thank you, Dana, for being available tonight. Yes, you are so welcome. I started doing these live streams about 3 years ago, I think it was. And I started doing them because I was getting so many emails from people that it got to the point where I could no longer get back to everybody. And that was such a terrible feeling, because I get it. I've been there. I remember feeling so overwhelmed and lost and afraid. And So I thought, well, I'll just go on YouTube for 3 hours and then people can just ask questions and this will kind of be and take the place of me getting back to all the emails. So that's how this all started. So yes, I'm here every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's something that I enjoy doing, and it's something that I needed way back then, and uh, something I'm, like I said, I'm glad to be able to do, and I'm glad that people are able to get something out of everything that I say. That's just a really cool feeling. Oh, well, good. Angelin says, Dana, you were extra powerful tonight and your wisdom is saving me. Thank you. Oh my goodness. I am just thrilled to hear that. I tell you, half the time I just talk on these live streams and I just feel like I'm just rambling. And at the end of them, I'm like, man, I hope I made some sense to somebody because I'm not sure if I did. So I'm glad. I'm glad that something I said is making some sense. Okay, let's see. Oh, I love that. Stephanie says, so many great ideas. I'm going to start wearing red lipstick and make a painting. Yes, I love that. If you remember, I used to have that big butterfly painting, which hopefully I will get back here soon from the insurance company. They're restoring it, which I don't even know what all that involves, but that butterfly painting I did like probably, I mean, within that first month after my first narc breakup. And that I got the biggest canvas that they had at Michael's or Hobby Lobby or wherever it was. And I painted that. I started painting that with a paintbrush and it wasn't working the way I wanted to. And so I had all these different tubes of acrylic paint and I just began pouring them on there and I painted that painting with my hands. And I was like, this is what I want to be. I want to transform and I want to be something even better than I was before. So that's the story behind my butterfly painting, which, like I said, hopefully I'll have back soon. It's powerful to make artwork from all this. It really, really is. Even if you don't consider yourself an artist. I definitely do not consider myself an artist, but it was very cathartic to do that. Let's see here. Jay says, the addiction to the narcissist is maddening. I want to let go, but I feel so lost. Totally understand that feeling. It can really help to prepare yourself for that void. Change is always difficult. It always is, no matter, even if it's necessary, it's always difficult. And detaching from a narcissist like this is one of the most difficult things a person can do because there's a lot of trauma bonds that are involved. There's just a lot of there's a lot of curiosity. There's a lot of unanswered questions. There's just frustration. There's anger. There's, I think are so oftentimes desperate to be validated and we just want to get through to them of like, no, like you did this, like own up to it, apologize, or I want to see you suffer as much as I suffered. And all of these feelings can be bubbling up and it's really hard to move forward when there's so much stuff there. And, it can really help getting a plan, getting busy, staying busy, doing everything that I just mentioned, kind of changing up your life. So the focus isn't primarily on them or like the lack of them. your focus has more positive like outlets. So, and that's another reason I like meetup.com so much, is because it can be, if you join different groups around different topics, you know, random topics, like you want to learn guitar, or like there's a writers group that I just joined the other day, or photography, or like outdoor adventures, you know, things that are totally different. Getting out of your comfort zone, and it just kind of hits the reset button on your brain. You're around a totally different group of people. They're going to be total strangers, and it's going to change your conversation too, which is also kind of an added benefit of being around a group of strangers doing a totally different thing, is you're not necessarily going to want to talk about what happened to you. And sometimes that can be a good thing. It just gives you a break from everything. So you're more fully in the moment. If you signed up to go on a walk with a group or a hike or something, you're focusing more on kind of getting to know them, or being on the hike, or kind of listening to them about their day at work, or, you know, whatever. So, yeah. Uh, yeah, that, and so true. Alcuda Babe says, what would you suggest to people when they are in that moment of emotion, if you're not very good at controlling them, or if you're having a sensitive day? Frankly, I think you summed it up perfectly. I would let them know exactly that. Hey, you know what? I've got a lot of stuff going on right now, and I'm having a really emotional day, and I'm not having a lot of luck controlling it. And I'm just a big mix of emotions, and I'm just really sensitive right now. And um, I just want to let you know that it's not you, that it's me. And if it comes out, you know, trying to kind of pull back. So if you say, you know what, hey, if my office door is shut, or if I just don't feel very talkative, or um, if I seem like there's something different about me, it's just, I'm going through a lot right now. And please just know it's not you, it's me. Most people can relate and can understand that. Excuse me. Yes, Marilyn says, the anger, rage, and fear are so powerful, forgiving, critical. This is a debt that no one can pay, but it seems like someone should. Yeah, there's a lot of, it's righteous anger. The way that you feel is righteous. And when people talk about forgiveness, this is another thing I think people oftentimes say. They don't mean for it to be as minimizing or as re-victimizing as it can feel. But when people talk about forgiveness, especially to a person who's still hurting from this, even if it's been a year or 2 years or 5 years, if a person is still hurting from this and somebody else says to them, well, you know, you need to forgive. Or if we're telling ourselves that, I just need to forgive. I just need to forgive. I'm not a good Christian if I don't forgive. Or, you know, people tell me I should forgive. And I guess that's the higher ground kind of thing to do. That can keep a person really stuck. So here's something else that helped me with that is, as far as forgiveness goes, I look at it, I think that word is so misunderstood, misused, and misapplied, and it can lead a person back into hot water if that happens. So I really like to separate out that there's a difference between forgiving somebody and releasing anger towards them. Uh, so when people say, oh, well, you know, you need to forgive, or if I'm telling myself I need to forgive, I rephrase it in terms of, you know what, I'm working towards releasing anger. And I think we talked about this last week. This can be really difficult because the anger that we have is righteous anger. And for a lot of people, it's that anger is what's keeping them safe. They're like, if I let go of this anger, I'm terrified that I'm going to let this person back in my life. And like, I need this anger to protect me from them. And so what we were talking about last week was that anger, just like the pain, just like any other emotion, has messages for you. So if you can write down the messages of what messages does this anger have for me? Never, you know, I don't know, never loan somebody that you're dating money would be one that I had to learn that I was really upset about. Um, allowing, not realizing that I was being mistreated, not listening to my intuition, all of these things that I was just angry, I just had a lot of anger. It was just kind of this nebulous fog of anger. Like I didn't, so writing all that stuff down, like, okay, what are you angry about? Like, it's okay to be angry. Like, what are you angry about? Getting clarity for yourself. And then if you write it all down, like keeping that letter in a drawer somewhere and realizing, okay, I can start working towards releasing this anger, but still keeping those messages. So you don't go back. So you remember everything that you've learned. That's a huge, huge thing. We talked about Lucy had a ton of great feedback in my second book, the Out of the Fog book, on forgiveness. And she was saying, she's like, forgiveness, really healthy, appropriate forgiveness it's a transactional event. It's where somebody says they're sincerely apologetic about their behavior. They take massive action to correct the damage done, and then they don't have it happen again. And then at that point, we can decide, okay, do I forgive this person or not? But if none of that stuff is there, then like forgiving them in that context wouldn't be appropriate or wise. But so, like I said, I prefer to think of forgiveness in terms of just releasing that anger so it doesn't ruin our lives. Thank you, Crystal, for the live stream donation. I appreciate that. And Marilyn, if you can, like I was saying, like if you can transmute that, there's so much power in anger and in rage. So much power. If you can transmute that into something positive, it can radically change your life. That was another big aha moment for me as I was talking to my brother during all of this. And he's a personal trainer and he's a fitness model. And, he's just could be on the cover of a magazine. He's just totally ripped. And he was saying that, he was saying two different things. The first one was he had gotten a bunch of messages from people his whole life of basically what he was capable of. And people kept trying to, his passion has always been fitness. People had always tried to talk him out of it. Oh, you're never going to make any money doing that. And, you're too old to do that, because he didn't get started until he was older. This will never go anywhere. You need a good job, a nice, safe, secure job with benefits. And so he was working a nice, safe, secure job and he hated it. And it took his girlfriend at the time who cheated on him. It just rocked his world so much. He just kind of felt like, I've got nothing to lose. So I guess I just might as well go ahead and get my personal training certificate and do this. And so he did, and he did it without telling anybody. And then he called me and he's like, I've got a job. I just started working at a job doing this. He's like, and I love it. Anyways, so it took that pain in his life to push him into doing something like that he really wanted to do. But then he was also telling me, so fast forward, he'd been training for, I don't know, 10 plus years now. So he was telling me, he's like, Dana, after my second relationship just blew up and I was so embarrassed and ashamed. I'm like, what am I missing? Like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Why me? What's going on? And I was so hurt. And he said, Dana, there's so much power in anger. And he said he loved that when clients would come to him and they were like, you know what? I just got bullied for the last time today in school. Like, I'm tired of it. Or I just realized I couldn't fit in an airplane seat. Or they had some sort of major moment that caused them a tremendous amount of like emotional pain. And that was their rock bottom. or their partner upped and left them, or something major happened where they're like, you know what, I want to change my life. He lives for that because he's like, okay, let's go. Like, you've got this major driving force to radically change your life. Like, let's not waste the power in that. Like, there's so much power in anger if you can harness it. If you can't harness it, and it's, difficult to do, I get it. It can feel like a fire hose that's just on full blast and it's just flailing around. But if you can focus it, it's like a laser beam and it can just cut through anything, and it can take your life into places, positive places that you never thought were possible. Okay, let me scroll up. Yes, Kelly says, you are a huge inspiration to me. Well, thank you. Thank you. And to all who are fighting to find themselves again, we are in the same war. It's so overwhelming. I just keep listening, and knowledge is power. Yes, knowledge is power. It really, really is. And, uh, it's Sweetbriar. I don't know if she's on here this week. I don't even know if it's a she. I think it's a she. Was saying, we were talking about this a little bit last week about kind of reconnecting, like healing childhood wounds and reconnecting with our like authentic self and rediscovering who we are. And that's just so powerful. And I think a lot of really the rediscovering also comes at the same time as rebuilding. Because like I was saying earlier, it's not about going back to who you are. It's about creating an exciting, compelling vision of who you want to be and then steering into that. So yes, Wonder Panda says, I like this verse. Discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you. Proverbs 2:11. I have never heard that before, but I'm going to write that down. I really like that as well. That's very, very profound. I like that. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, Jennifer says, I think part of my issues too isn't just the main abuse from my NPD or BPD dad, but also the secondary abuse from my bipolar mom. Everything was just so erratic when visiting her on the weekends as a kid. And my dad, even though he was the abuser, he still gave me discipline and knowledge in other ways. And that's hard when a person grows up in a home that there is so much instability, and you've got it's not only unstable, but then you have two parents that are abusive and, kind of emotionally neglectful in their own way. And as a child, I would imagine it's sort of like you're trying to kind of piece together, pulling different parts from each parent, just trying to get through, to try to maybe, like, if I can take a little bit from dad and a little bit from mom, like this is going to nourish me enough that I can somehow, get fed, get clothed, have a roof over my head, get the emotional support that I need. So yeah, there's a lot of healing. It sounds like that would need to come, that would need to happen. Yeah. And the whole kind of healing the inner child part of it all, sometimes, I think oftentimes, with a big part of that inner child is giving ourselves, like being the parent to ourselves that we wish we had. And that all ties into self-love and self-care, and just, everything that you didn't get from your dad and mom, giving that to yourself now, giving yourself stability, giving yourself reassurance, and nourishing and compliments and just reassurance of like, you know what, there's a lot of things that are right about you. You're doing a great job. You're worthy of being treated with dignity and respect. You're given that stuff to yourself. Grace says, let me read the last half of that. It says something about, I am hyper vigilant from recent compound trauma. Very normal. That's very normal. And so I would encourage you at this time to take a few steps back and just regroup. You don't need to have all the answers right away. And I know it can be so stressful, right? Like we want to be there. We want to be at the finish line. We want to be healed. We want to be even functional. We want some sort of semblance of normalcy in our lives, and like we're not there. And that's really what stress is. It's like it's the divide between like where we are and where we want to be. And if you can just kind of pull back and be like, you know what, you're here right now, and that's okay. Like it's okay. You don't need to have all of the answers right now, and you don't need to try to figure everything out. Like right now, what's most important is that you breathe and you just regroup and get recentered and just be extra, extra good to yourself right now. And just if you are encountering new people, if you're trying to meet new people, I would definitely encourage you to not date right now. But if you're out there, doing meetup groups or trying new things, just realize, okay, you just need to go slow. Like you're extra vulnerable right now. This is a time just to go slow and just go slow. Like you set the pace. Let's see. Yes, Kelly says, oh, yes, you're so right. Finding ourselves again is not enough. It's about finding the new us, who I am, what do I want, and how do I get there? Baby steps. Yeah, so much power in that. And I think it takes a lot of the pressure off of trying to be like, okay, I need to get back to where I was. I need to get back to how I felt about things before this happened. Because that can really keep a person stuck, because no matter what good or bad happens, we can never go backwards. Life is always about moving forwards. So I think it can really help to just embrace that and to create a new empowering normal. So then that way it's not about like necessarily rediscovering yourself. It's more about creating yourself. So like, okay, who do you want to be in this next chapter in your life? So it's kind of fun to think about. I think that was another one of my aha moments. My grandmother was a writer, and my mom, during this time, she'd come out to visit me because I was just, I was just having the first go around with all of this. It was they were both incredibly stressful in different ways, but anyways, long story short, she came out to stay with me for a little bit to help out, and she brought my grandmother's book. That was her story. Her story of narcissistic abuse is basically what it was. Although my mother didn't understand that that's what it was. It was just sort of like my grandmother, her book, which has never been published. It was called something like From Divorce from Despair to Delight. And it was her whole story of her divorce with my grandfather, who was a narcissist. And I think realizing it was very surreal. Like reading that book, you know, like, I don't even know, 70 years. Yeah. Yeah. About 70 years, 70 years after she wrote it. So like she wrote it in the 70s. And then realizing that I have my own story, right? And that maybe someday somebody else would be reading my story. And it was just kind of the realization of like, what would I want? How would I want my story to end? Like, it just was a very strange, like surreal kind of moment, but it kind of gave me some it gave me some distance from my own experience and realizing, you know what? This is my story. This is my experience. And to take a few steps back and think about it, like you are the author of the book of your life. And you get to choose who is in each chapter and to what extent, and who's a main character and who's a supporting character, and when certain chapters start and when certain chapters end. It's kind of a cool way to think about your life, I think. Gives perspective of that things aren't forever. It's just chapters in your book, chapters in the book of your life. Okay, let me scroll up here. Hmm. Bonnie was saying that she had to start documenting everything so she wouldn't feel like she was going crazy. I think that's huge. And I think that's a really good strategy too, to write all this stuff down, because when a person is going through it, it can feel so confusing and we can really start second guessing ourselves. I think that's also a really big sign. If we're feeling perpetually confused, if we're feeling like we're losing touch with our sanity because of somebody's behavior, that's a good sign that we need to get some distance between us and them, because odds are you don't feel like that around other people. It's just them. Okay, let's see. Jennifer says, this is one of the reasons I'm so confused. It seems that a lot of people can understand that their abusive parents were abusive, but my mind has been so skewed by his justifications for so long. He just seemed like the more stable parent, so I saw him as the good parent, even though he'd been taking advantage of me since I was 12. You know, everybody has like different levels of like acceptance and awareness and clarification of that. So you're not alone in that. I think a lot of people do struggle with that, with kind of like, was my parent really abusive, or you know, am I really minimizing things, or like, was this a problem, or to what extent? And it can be hard, especially in that role that you're talking about, where even though he was hurting you in many ways, he could also play the role of the good parent, you know, or the not as awful parent. So, or the not as problematic parent, maybe is a better way to say that. I think this is one of the reasons people do tend to stay stuck with abusive people, because their behavior can run so hot and cold, and it can just be so confusing as to what am I experiencing? But this goes back to, I think a lot of people have this idea that abusive people are 100% abusive 100% of the time, and they're not. So it can be, periodic abuse. It can be, followed by times where they act in ways that are very supportive or loving, but then other times they're incredibly neglectful or just like flat out abusive. And it's just this kind of emotional roller coaster with them. And if that's the clarity that you have now, where you're like, I'm not even quite sure how to define my childhood. But if you're like, it was an emotional roller coaster, or like you're able to see like, okay, certain things were flat out a problem, but then other things were still good. It's okay to realize, okay, this person kind of had this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde personality. And like I said, I think that's the challenge for so many of us, is like, how do you reconcile those two sides? It's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to do. Okay, let me see here. Crystal says, I'm a helper and a healer, and I'll never change despite all of this. I am an INFP. Yeah, I think a lot of people that have gone through abuse or neglect tend to become more on like the healer side of the spectrum. Like we've seen it. We've been subjected to a lot of stuff, and we don't want anybody else to have to go through that because we know how it feels. So I think the one of the hardest lines to walk in doing that is with helping from a place that's not enabling, like helping from a place that's empowering them. If like I can walk alongside you, like I can't carry you across the finish line, but I can walk alongside you through this, and letting them know like there's so much right about you, like you're stronger, there's like you can do this. Do you know what I mean? And if you're struggling and you feel like you can't do this, then I've got some resources, and helping them to be able to find themselves and to turn inward and to find their own inner strength and all of this. Like I think that's holding space, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Like allowing other people to kind of navigate their own stuff to where we don't feel that kind of compulsive need to jump in and fix it all for them, but helping in a way that we can help. That's not over giving, I think, of ourselves. And that's a balancing act, and a place I think you have to kind of continually ask yourself, like to check in with yourself, about how you're doing, like how you're doing with that. Bonnie says, Dana, I got to the point where I wasn't sure I could tell what reality was anymore, or why I felt like I should crawl into a hole and just die. I spent an entire day silent and looking like a zombie. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine manipulation and abuse, especially more covert abuse, can just fly under the radar, and it can just happen slowly and stealthily, that a person's not even aware of it. And yeah, it can lead a person to feeling exactly the way that you felt. Absolutely. Absolutely. That was, I think another like aha moment 417, is that was a very strange thing to me as well. Is it was the realization of, I didn't realize when I was being mistreated. that was very odd to me to realize that, of how many things I had justified from friends, from quote unquote friends, from really scary people that I had dated, just problems. Like I didn't realize when my boundaries were being crossed. And it took a situation getting really severe to where like I could no longer hang on anymore. And then I would leave. But I didn't, like I knew it was weird. Like I knew how to be assertive, but that wasn't really useful if I didn't really know when my boundaries were being crossed. Does that make any sense? It was just very strange. So that was a big getting in tune with that, realizing, okay, that you're, our emotions are giving us feedback about what we're experiencing in our environment. And so if we're feeling, I guess getting in tune with like when your feelings are hurt, that's kind of starts off like with that, right? On a more mild end, like our feelings getting hurt, or just having some sort of just not being okay with certain things. And then what does that look like to actually address that, instead of continually giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, or ignoring how we feel, or not feeling justified in how we feel. That was a big game changer for me. I feel like I see the world eyes wide open now. And it's almost terrifying to look back and think about who I was 7 years ago, because I was so incredibly naive and didn't even realize it. And I had had a ton of life experience, and I was still just, I think, seeing other people through the lens of who I was and like what I would do, and not seeing their behavior for what it was, and realizing what other people were really capable of. I don't know, it's just strange. Yeah, I think that's, okay. So Supa Mundane says, what about neglectful friends or other relationships? How do you address it when they're absent half the time? I would say if something's on your mind, to approach it with to the person, approach it with the person in like a tactful way. So if you've got a friend that's not really around, or sometimes says hurtful things, to just say, hey, that really kind of hurt my feelings, or um, I found this kind of confusing, or um, talking, just bringing it up. And even the thing is, a lot of people, most people, I would say, are going to continue to fight for their position. So if you say, because most people don't do things that they feel are wrong, like every single one of us feels justified in whatever actions we take. So when they continue to push back and they're like, oh, well, I didn't mean that, or, whatever, I think realizing that it's okay to feel how you feel, and that even though they might not have meant it, or whatever, it doesn't change how you feel about it. So like, it's still valid, if it hurt your feelings, it hurt your feelings. And like, it's not, hopefully if they're team oriented, then they're going to be willing to work towards a solution. So if they were calling you, quote unquote, teasing you and calling you names, or kind of razzing you in a way that wasn't funny, if you bring that up and they're like, oh, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, or, oh, you're too sensitive, or whatever. It's like, but that's not like, I just didn't find that funny. Like, so please don't joke with me in that way, And a normal, like, solutions oriented person, if they're razzing you and they hurt your feelings, they'll stop. They'll be like, oh, wow, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, I was totally joking. I did not mean to hurt your feelings. Like, it's not going to happen again. That's a challenge. Bonnie says, Dana, this has been my husband's whole thing. He never intends to do anything wrong or mean or hurtful. but it's being done so subtly with the guilt and need to be right. And that is all I see now. Yeah. Have you kind of brought that up about, have you addressed the guilt? Like if he says something like, I don't know, if you could maybe give me some examples of what he says to use guilt or the need to be right. And if he's saying something like, well, okay, I guess, I guess I can just handle this on my own, or, I don't know what I would do if you were to leave. I mean, I might go back to drinking, like, or kind of what level of guilt are you able to address that and just say, well, that's, I feel like, when you say things like that, it's designed to kind of try to make me feel guilty, and I'm not comfortable with that. So a lot of that guilt kind of stuff, if we kind of nip that in the bud and don't let it work, somebody's like, well, I guess I'll just go back to drinking if you leave, to realize that that's a manipulation, and to just be like, well, we all have choices. I hope that you don't choose to go back to drinking, but if you do, like, that's on you. And to not own that, to not be, I'm not going to be responsible for another person doing destructive things because they don't get their way. Bonnie says he has to be seen as the good guy, the loving guy, but everything nice that he does is done in the glory of his goodness, not really for my benefit. Yeah, okay, that kind of stuff is infuriating. Is it sort of like, yeah, well, I took you out for dinner. It's like, well, yeah, but we went to like your favorite restaurant, or everything is, it's about like, it's about you, but like you're pretending that it's something that you're doing for me. Is it along those kinds of lines? Missouri Cowboy says, I wanted people to like me and validate me, and I couldn't understand that they resented me. Boy, that's really powerful, especially, I think it's challenging enough, right? To try to get people to like us or validate us, assuming that they're just normal, decent people. Like, that's a hard enough way to live, needing other people to like us. It's that added challenge of, if they are personality disordered, or they're destructive, and not only do they not like us or validate us, they resent us, or they want to really hurt us. Yeah, that's definitely an extra layer to that. That's very insightful. There was I took a picture of it, a quote. Let me see if I can find it. I have to take pictures of things because I have the memory of a goldfish. Okay, actually, there's two things. I forgot. So this is the fun part about having a terrible memory, is then when you find stuff again, you're like, oh, well, you're just so tickled. You're like, that's just so cool. I totally forgot about that. So one of the quotes that I took a picture of that I really like, it's from a guy. I don't know if this is a famous person or not, but the name on here is Walter Benjamin. And the quote is, to be happy is to be able to become aware of oneself without fright. I just thought that was really profound. Like, every single aspect of ourselves, to become aware of that. So becoming aware of, like, because what you said, Missouri Cowboy, that kind of stuff, if I wanted people to like me and validate me, and I couldn't understand that they resented me, that's such a hard realization to come to. And so many layers of pain, I think, separate a person from that level of awareness. it's hard to sit with something like that, and on so many different levels. But yes, I do think that, you know, happiness can come from those realizations and just loving yourself in the process. And it goes back to, I think, kind of being nourishing ourselves and being loving towards ourselves when we have these realizations. And yeah, just loving ourselves through that process. Okay, so here's the other quote that I took a picture of from Albert Hubbard. Albert Hubbard. It says, to avoid criticism is to do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. I thought that was incredibly powerful. So the only way to avoid criticism is basically to not exist. It's to erase so much of ourselves in order to be accepted. And this is something that I see a lot with different people, like other YouTubers and other writers. It's hard, man. Like, it's hard putting yourself out there and getting criticism day in and day out about stuff, especially, like, I actually really like constructive criticism, but the really harsh criticism, it's harsh and it can really knock a person for a loop. And we all go through this to some extent, right? In our day-to-day lives. And it can be so hard, but I think realizing that in a way it can kind of set you free. Like, not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. Like, what was the other quote? Something along the lines of, and I wish I'd have to look up who said it. Something along the lines of, you know, I used to wish that I used to be so nervous that other people would like me. And now I've gotten to the place where I'll be fine if they don't. And I think that's so true. Like, I think solid self-esteem is realizing that not everybody's going to like us and that we're still okay. That we don't need them to like us or to think, oh yeah, everybody's going to like me. Like, that's not solid self-esteem. That's just not how the world works. Like, not everybody's going to like us, and that's okay. But there's still a lot right with you. It doesn't even if you're not everybody's kind of person, and none of us are. Okay, let me. Bonnie says, Dana, yes, we had a talk where I stated my boundary that I needed some mental space, and I got 3 days of silent treatment. He's a good guy, glamour guy, gaslighter. Yeah, that's frustrating. Randy asks, and actually, let me back up a little bit real quick. Well, let me answer Randy's question before I forget. Randy says, does she only answer paid questions? No, I answer the donations are just donations. They are never expected or a part of any of this. They're appreciated, but they're definitely not expected or needed in order for me to answer a question or anything. So the chat goes quickly. So if I'm not answering, I don't get through all of the questions. I try to get through as many as I possibly can. And then if there's certain people that, and frankly, a lot of people in the chat like are also, they've been here every single week and they have a ton of insight into all of this as well. So odds are if I don't respond, that they will respond. But if it's something that you're really looking to get my 2 cents on, they will oftentimes do a good job at trying to get my attention as we go through the live stream. So yes. Okay, Bonnie, back to silent treatment kind of stuff. Yeah, that it's just really difficult to have effective communication with another person that either doesn't know how to have effective communication or they have no interest in knowing how to have effective communication. It's a challenge. And yeah, that silent treatment kind of stuff is, you know, it's really, really hurtful. It really can be incredibly hurtful. So I would encourage you, if he does stuff like that, to make it very clear of that, you know what, I don't do silent treatment. And I just want, if you think that this is going to somehow punish me or teach me a lesson, I just want you to realize that that's not going to work. And then you make the most of it while he's not talking to you. You turn on the radio at dinner time, you start watching a YouTube video, you gray rock the whole situation and just make it seem like this is not this is not impacting me. It's just like how you would treat a child who's trying to punish you. You know, you don't love me, or I don't love you, and I'm going to show you, and I'm just not going to, do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, then I guess you're not going to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm not budging. So like, you're not going to get out of it. You're not going to be rewarded for bad behavior, is what it is. Like, it's okay. It's okay for a person to get upset. It's okay for a person to need some time to cool down. It's okay for a person to not know what to say, but they can still keep communication open, even if they say, you know what, I'm frustrated and I'm just done. And I feel like I just don't want to talk for the rest of the night. Can we just pick this up again tomorrow? Or, yeah, something along those lines. Like, just keeping that communication open of like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm tired. Whatever. But to go silent like that is frustrating and not cool. Okay, let me scroll up here. Gamer Christina, hello. Says, I wish I knew how to get myself out of isolation, but I feel so safe. Yeah, I can totally understand that. And perhaps the answer is just a little bit at a time. I don't know if there's any meetup groups in your area, or even, I don't know if you're, I don't know where you live, or like what kind of, if you're spiritual at all, but like, okay, so for example, like one of the things that helped me was during this time, I was new to town. I didn't know anybody. I was going to the Unitarian Church here, which is like a non-denominational, basically centered around love kind of a place. And it was just a good energy kind of place with a bunch of people from all walks of life. And that, even though I really didn't talk to anybody there, it was a good feeling to be able to just to get out of the house and go someplace around and be around, just to be around other people and to listen to the minister. There was a really cool lady who had been through a lot of stuff, and it was just a good energy kind of a place. So maybe doing something along those lines of something that does feel somewhat safe, and then realizing that you can always leave. Like, you don't have to be there for hours on end. You can, if you go to a meetup group, if it's like a book club, or if it's whatever it might be, dinner, you can go for 20 minutes and then you can leave. So you set the pace. You are in total control. It's your life. Oh, I missed my tea. This is my Egyptian licorice tea that now apparently I can only get on Amazon. I was so sad after the fire. We had to get rid of everything, and I had to get rid of all my tea, and I was so sad, but I have it back. can you elaborate? Ileana says, what is the correlation between narcissism and psychological and physical captivity? I'm not sure if I fully understand your question. Can you, like, are you talking about people that have been like physically held captive or psychologically held captive, and do they develop narcissism? Let me back up and let me kind of rephrase. I think one of the most compelling arguments or theories, maybe would be a better word, for understanding narcissism that I've come across is that it's more of like a defense mechanism. So, and we all have them. We all have ways of coping, and we kind of slide in and out of different defenses as they're needed. So you have like fight, flight, freeze, you know, like befriending others. There's all of these different things that we use. And for this theory is talking more about like narcissism, this degree of kind of self-absorption can come from either a child being spoiled. So they grow up with that sense of entitlement and justification of, yeah, it's all about me all the time, because it always has been and it always should be. Or the opposite, where they kind of grow up feeling like less than. And so bonding to other people doesn't feel safe. And they put up all of these walls, and they turn inward, and they develop this preoccupation with themselves. So it's just kind of a way, an unintended consequence. Like it's just a way to, it's like a substitute for self-esteem. And I think also a substitute for like self-reliance or healthy self-reliance. And that's where like a lot of that grandiosity comes from, is, you know, if a person just thinks that they're the best at everything and that they're really out of touch, they don't have an accurate understanding of kind of who they are and like appropriate behavior or any of that, like they're just very grandiose, that tends to stem from like a low sense of self-esteem. Even though it comes across as an inflated sense of self-esteem, that's more of like a compensation for feeling inadequate, because normal people don't have to go around trying to prove themselves all the time. It's like, I don't need you to see me in a certain way. Like I am who I am, and I'll be fine. Like if you don't like me for that, like that's kind of more along the lines of like a normal person point of view. But a narcissist tends to be very focused, especially the ones that are more, excuse me, more about appearances. If they've got to have, if they're very status oriented, they have to be seen in a certain light, of that they have to drive a certain car and live in a certain neighborhood. And an old friend of mine, her husband, who was a narcissist, comes to mind. This guy was like textbook. He was so ridiculous, and he didn't see it. Like he did not see how other people saw him at all. And he really thought he was impressing people right and left. Nobody could stand this guy. He was so obnoxious and arrogant and insecure, was constantly status dropping, always would show up way overdressed for like any situation, to a point of like ridiculousness. And he just was very out of touch with how other people saw him. But that, like, it came across as deep insecurity. But in his mind, I think it came across as, I mean, he really just thought he was like Johnny Chachi. Like he thought he had it going on. Nobody else did. So I don't know. Interesting. Crystal says, can I ask for advice? Sure. Did you ask a question? Let me scroll up and see if I have to stop the chat when I'm talking because I can't read. I can't read and think at the same time. Let's see here. thank you, Cynthia, for the live stream donation. I appreciate that. That is crazy. Grace says, I am accused of doing silent treatment by distancing myself, but he's doing the silent treatment to me. It's crazy. Yes. And I actually took a picture. Somebody made a comment the other day that I thought was worth sharing in here. That just summed up like silent treatment kind of stuff, like the level of crazy making the silent treatment stuff can get to. She was saying, this was a comment on another YouTube video of mine. She said, I was given the silent treatment. It took a bit for me to catch on, but then I received a text that was insinuating that I was ignoring him. However, I was just not able to answer the phone at the time. So then I received another goodbye text as though the relationship was done, just because I couldn't answer at that very moment. What kind of abusive tactic is this? I'm not even sure how to respond to such a wrong assumption. I thought that was I have been on the receiving end of this as well, and that kind of stuff is absolutely confusing and maddening. Of like, wait a minute, I'm like, you're either they're giving the silent treatment and then accusing you of doing it, or because you don't respond right away, they accuse you of giving silent treatment or being abusive. And it's like, dude, I was taking a bath, or I wasn't around. Like, I just got back to you. It's only been 20 minutes or whatever. And then they accuse you of playing games, and they're like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm out of here. I can't handle this anymore. And it's just like, I don't even, what just happened? Like, I don't even understand this level of what is going on through your head. Okay, let me scroll up here. Crystal, let's see if I can get your question all in one here. Okay, she says, my ex hasn't lived in the family home for 1.5 years. Kids haven't spoken to him for 6 months. But he wants to come here for camping supplies and for the chainsaw. What the heck do? I don't want to infuriate him. Do you have, well, and that can be dicey. And I get that, where it's sort of like, I feel like, okay, this is his stuff. Like, I just want to give it back to him. I don't really want to see him. I'm just concerned about all of this. An option might be, I would encourage you to not engage if that's at all possible. If you're concerned about your safety, if you can possibly, you could either say something like, oh, that stuff is in storage, or it's over at somebody else's house. I'll drop it off. Like, I'll drop it off to your mother's. Drop it off to like another third party person that you feel reasonably safe around. That would be an option. Another option would be to make a phone call to non-emergency police and say, this is what's going on. I don't know what to do. I want to drop this person's stuff off. I think it'd be better off if you could drop it off somewhere, so that way you can leave, versus having him come over and then he may or may not leave. Like, you don't have that much control over the situation. See if non-emergency police can kind of either go with you and lay low so they can't see that they're with you, or if they have any ideas on how to do that. But at a minimum, if you do end up dropping stuff off, or if he ends up coming over to your house, I would have all of the stuff together. You might want to say something like, you know what, the kids and I had planned to go to a movie. I would make up some sort of excuse as to why you can't be there, or why you've got to leave within the next 5 minutes, and have all of the stuff like sitting by the door, nothing that would enrage him, right? So like, the stuff is covered. It's just like, hey, we didn't want to miss you. I know this stuff means a lot to you. We were just headed out. We were gonna, I don't know, we were gonna whatever you're gonna say. We were gonna go. We have plans, and so I just wanted to make sure that you were gonna get this stuff okay, and then you leave, so that you're not at the mercy of him coming over, him creating a scene. You're stuck in the house. You don't know what to do. I would talk, if he's coming over to your place, I would talk to the kids ahead of time. If you would arrange a time of, okay, he's going to be there at 1 o'clock, then telling the kids, hey guys, I thought it would be really great if, depending on how old your kids are and kind of what they know about the situation, I was thinking, let's go see a movie. So if you're doing this on a Sunday afternoon, let's go see a movie on Sunday afternoon. You arrange, the movie starts at 1:30. He's coming over at 1 o'clock. I would let him know, hey, you know, we're going to go, like, just so you don't get tangled up in all of that. Do you know what see what I'm saying? And so then that way the kids ideally are already like ready to go, and you're not getting roped into something that you don't want to get roped into. Gamer Christina says, I'm dating a new guy who talks sweet in text messages, but in person, he does not even come close to sweet talking me. Would you agree that this is a red flag? Well, different people, not necessarily, like different people can come across differently in different, like different mediums. Like for example, my ex-husband wrote the most wonderful emails. He could express himself just amazingly through writing, and was not like that in person. He was super shy and reserved, and it was like a different guy. So kind of same thing over the phone. And I think one of my big lessons, my father's that way too. Like he can write the most amazing, like my dad seriously has like this gift for picking out cards, and it can express himself in just like the most heartfelt ways in cards, but like not so much in person and not through any other actions. It's just that in that way, it's just bizarre. And I think one of my big takeaways from that was just that you can have different types of chemistry, especially if we're dating a person that you've met like online. You can have different types of chemistry with people in different ways. This is why it's so important for us to kind of not get overly emotionally invested in a person right away, because you might have amazing chemistry with them over email or over text, and then in person, not so much. So that can really be confusing when we're experiencing like, wow, I have amazing chemistry with this person in this one way, but then kind of really where it counts, right? Like in real life, it's just not there. And it can be hard to walk away from that relationship if that we have all of these feelings that are already involved because we've spent hours upon hours texting this person and going back and forth, and we've kind of fallen for them as far as like who they are through text messages, but not who they really are in person. So in that sense, it can be concerning. Okay, let's see. Renee said or asks, if someone is on drugs, shows a sign of being a malignant narcissist, could it be because of the drugs? Or if they show signs on drugs, then they are more than likely a malignant narcissist sober? You know, either way, it's a problem, right? But yeah, I mean, drugs and alcohol abuse can definitely cause like major personality changes in a person. And it can be really, especially when you're talking drugs like meth. I think that's the main one that comes to mind, would be meth. It can cause like major personality disordered behavior, seemingly personality disordered behavior in a person. And it's hard to tell, like, is this the drug or is this how they actually are? And so normally a person needs a certain amount of clean time under their belt without the drug. So other people can tell, like, is this them or is this the drug? And the challenge with drugs, especially like meth, that basically they cause brain damage, is, are there any lasting effects? Like, is this person going to have personality changes? Like maybe they were totally fine before they started using hard drugs. They're really scary and dangerous and different when they're using. They might still be a very different person after they get sober. But either way, if it's drug induced or if it's personality disorder, kind of either way, they're not emotionally available to have a relationship with. So it's not going to work either way, at least not at this point in their sobriety or in their drug use, right? So, and I wouldn't even entertain the idea of seeing if a relationship is possible until they have, I would say, like a solid 2 years of clean time under their belt before you even consider it, because the risk is so high of, and if you're talking about bringing a person, having a relationship, potentially having them in your home, and they're using hard drugs and they're dangerous and scary and violent when they do use, the possibility of them relapsing anyhow is going to be pretty high. And I mean, it's, if you've got if you've got minor children in the home, I just wouldn't even, just really proceed with caution. I wouldn't even open that door, frankly. It's just the risk is too high. And then not to mention too, is depending on how like healthy the person was before the drug use, one of the things to then, assuming they get sober, assuming that they've got all of that stuff kind of handled, right? Would be, how do they handle frustration? How do they handle conflict? How do they handle stress? So a lot of people, it can be easy to think like, oh, it's the alcohol, or oh, it's the drugs that are the problem. That's definitely a big part of it. But then the other part of it is, did they ever even learn any healthy coping skills? Because most people tend to use or drink as a way of coping. So that's how they handle stress. It's how they handle frustration. That's how they handle, conflict. That's how they handle, a bad day. If there's nothing there now, like, okay, they got sober. That's great. That's a big piece of the puzzle. But then now what? This is why, dealing with addictions, it can be like playing that game whack-a-mole. And where, you whack one, like you deal with one and then boom, another one pops up. So addictions tend to run in threes, because kind of for that reason. It's like if a person can't handle, if this is their way of coping in one area, but then they can't use that. So if alcohol's not there, then it might be spending money. If that's not there, then it might be sex, or it might be, a drug, or it might be smoking. It might be something else, like that's kind of how this stuff tends to go. So until they learn a more constructive, healthy way of coping with things, then I would not entertain that, bringing that big wild card unknown into your home, especially if you have minor children in the house. Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't know. Green Eyes. Green Eyes says, do narcissists get dementia earlier as compared to normal people? I don't know. And I don't know if anyone's ever done a study on that. I don't know. Interesting. What makes you ask Is there something behind that question? That's a very interesting question. Jennifer says, when it comes to alcoholics and drug abusers, she says, I've been with 2 alcoholics, one for 9 years, and then one off and on for 4. And at that point in time, there's still manipulative people like a narcissist. Like a narcissist would be because of the drugs controlling them. So you'd still be in harm's way. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you're not dealing with a reasonable, logical, rational person. If a person is an alcoholic or they've got a substance issue, really, I would say any addiction. If they're a hoarder, if there's a sex addiction, if there's spending, any type of addiction like that, that's the problem. That's like, they're not emotionally healthy enough to be in a relationship, because when you're in a relationship with somebody that has an active addiction like that, it's you and it's them and it's their monkey on their back. There's 3 of you in that relationship, and that addiction part of it all is a big, big problem. And it's going to drive a person to lie, to potentially steal, to manipulate, to it's all kinds of deal breaking behavior, all kinds of like destructive, trust breaking, horrific, potentially long-term consequences type damaging behavior. This is why, when I've talked about before, like some of my own deal breakers in my life is, no abuse of any kind. So I no longer do anything, and I've backed things up. So I don't do perpetual confusion, because those are the early signs of it. I value my safety and my sanity. So I don't do perpetual confusion. I don't do mental anguish. I don't do basically people that I feel emotionally unsafe around. Like, that's where that ends. If a person registers as emotionally unsafe, or if I can't tell, then that's a deal breaker. So no abuse of any kind, no active addictions that are destructive. So, like I just said, drinking, drugs, shopping, sex, spending money, hoarding, like they need to get that. It doesn't make them necessarily a bad person. It just means that they've got some stuff to work on before they're ready to be in a relationship, or until they're ready to be in a relationship. So active addictions, adultery or cheating of any kind, I don't even do that. Like, there are no second chances. I just don't have, for me, trust is everything. A person's either emotionally safe or they're not. And it's such a breach of trust like that, I'm just done. I don't want to become an unhinged, jealous, insecure mess playing detective, always kind of suspicious as to like what's going on and what are they up to and how can I tell for sure. Like, I just don't even want to go there. So I don't. And then attitude. A big deal breaker for me is a person with a chronically negative attitude. So if they're, trying to always, if they're not supportive of me and what I'm doing, if they're always finding fault in me or everything that I'm doing, it's one thing to have concerns and to bring that up. Like, I'm totally fine with like constructive criticism, but if it's a person trying to knock me down, grind me down, that kind of stuff, no, like, we're done. Or if they're just continually complaining about their life, but then they're not taking any action to make it any different. Like, that kind of stuff is exhausting too. So those are some of my major deal breaker stuff. Basically, in short, find people that are nourishing for you. It's such an individual thing. Like, we're all so different. So like, what nourishes me? I think a lot of our, the deal breaker stuff is that I mentioned, that can be the kind of a solid, semi-universal foundation for stuff. Like, a healthy relationship is not possible with a person that's abusing you, that has active addictions, cheating on you, or who has a rotten attitude. Like, that's not going to be a healthy relationship. It's just going to be an exhausting relationship. So figuring out, okay, knowing what I don't want, like what do I want? Like what are my deal makers? So then that's just knowing yourself, like knowing, like for example, like my brother, right? He's a personal trainer, fitness model kind of guy. He's a total gym rat. And he would definitely need a woman who is all about going to the gym and, you know, eating the way that he eats and working out as much as he does. And, you know, that's that, like, and that's him, and that's important to him. And so he knows himself well enough that he needs to have that in his life. So it's just kind of knowing, you know, just knowing yourself. I mean, for me, I I write a lot, hours upon hours, every single day, 7 days a week. And that is, it can, I would imagine it's probably pretty difficult, like to be, um, to date me and to probably even be a friend of mine. Because especially when I'm really working on a book, it's all consuming. And I have a hard time shifting gears. And so I think a person, you know, Travis, the guy that I'm dating, has, you know, he's very patient about that. He's got his own friends, he's got his own hobbies, he's got his own thing. And so he doesn't take it personally if I am like, you know what, I'm sorry. Like I just need to write. Like I need to write today. I need to get this out of my head. So I need somebody that's supportive and understanding of that, you know. So. Super Mundane says, aw, she says, aw, you seem like a good friend. As a fellow writer, I get it. I had to talk this over with my partner who was impatient at first. Yeah, I think it's hard in type of like creative um, endeavor is it's just hard to switch your brain off when you're thinking about it. Uh, and it can be, I think too, with writing, it can be a very lonely life because it's just you and your computer, or you and your pad of paper. And um, yeah, so not everybody's going to understand that. I think other creative people tend to understand that, thank goodness. But I think other, you know, normal people, like normal people don't. Yeah, I think that's fantastic, Bonnie. And I think you should. She says, Dana, I may turn my own experiences into a book as well. I've documented so much stuff and I'm a writer as well. I totally get that I have to get it out of my head. Yes, it's just been so um, therapeutic. And I have also found it's very interesting how much clarity I've gotten from writing all of this stuff down. Like it's amazing the stuff that you forget when enough time has passed. And then you start writing about it and you're like, wow, my goodness. Like I never thought in a million years that I would ever kind of heal from this, like let alone forget parts of it. It's just wild. So yeah, it's really been something. Let's see. You know, you're so right, Kevin. Kevin says, he says, I'll tell you one thing I understand about teenagers is that they're dying to tell people what they think. And he's talking about, I think, Renee and her kids. Yes, I have found that as well too. Like if you can give kids enough space and provide, I think, a safe enough space of to just let them talk, it's amazing the stuff that comes out of them. One of the exercises that we used to do um, when I was working at a youth home for at-risk kids was we used to do this thing around dinner every night, and it was high and low. We used to play this game called high and low, and everybody would go around and they would talk about the high point of their day and then their low point of their day. And it was such a fun, like just insightful thing to do. Because then you kind of get thinking about your own, like, most of the time, like, we just go through the day. Like, we don't really think about, like, what was the high point of my day? What was the low point of my day? Like, you just kind of go through the days. But to really think about it, like, yeah, like, what was the high point? What was the low point? And then to also hear, like, what's going on with other people, it just helps you connect and, like, just see kind of what's going on with them. I love that. I love that. I just think that's so interesting. And then, speaking of which, so I have my insight journal too, and I will be working on this week. So this is the 3-year. This one, like I said before, this one has soot on it still from the fire, but just don't mind that. If you buy this book, yours won't have soot on it. But this book is full of questions, and I'm going to take probably about 100 or so of these questions out, and I will I'll put them on my website, my thriveafterabuse.com website. So if you want to use, I think a lot of these questions are really great conversation starters, great kind of connecting, bonding type questions for kids. They're age appropriate, and they're geared towards both children and adults that have gone through abuse. So I tried to be very kind of sensitive with the things I asked. But I'll put up a list if you want to take them. I think it'd be fun. Somebody had made a comment the other day that they had bought this book and that they were going through it with they have a daughter who is, I think they said, autistic, and that it was just something that they enjoyed doing. So here's some examples of some of the questions. And again, like Kevin was saying, kids do tend to like these questions. I think adults do too. It's just kind of fun. Okay, so here's a question. In what 2 ways have you treated yourself with value today? What was the last lesson you learned the hard way? What are 2 traits in people that make you either comfortable or uncomfortable, and why? Let's see here. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your younger self, and why? What new habits, if any, would you like to cultivate, and why? What have you worried about the most lately, and why? In what 2 ways are you different this year from how you were around this time last year? In what ways have you been courageous lately, and why? How are you feeling right now, and why? What is one small change you could make to your daily routine to enjoy your life more? What is one way you could bring more peace into your life? Who is the person you've spent the most time with lately, and what kind of influence have they had on you? What was the high point of your day today, and why? What is a strength you are glad to have, and why? When was the last time you did something fun? What did you do? Who do you enjoy being around, and why? Let's see. What is the latest life lesson you've learned, and how will you apply it? In what ways have you been creative lately? What do you like about your life right now and why? I think this is a great question. When was the last time you lied to yourself or someone else? Why did you lie and what did you lie about? So this book is just, it's full of questions. I don't know. I've had a lot of fun writing it, and it's been fun hearing from different people about how they're using it and kind of using it to get conversations going. I think, like Kevin was saying, I think especially with kids that are been kind of reserved and kind of shutting down, role modeling, I think having an open-ended questions like this where you're not kind of interrogating them or talking about things that maybe they're not comfortable with, asking questions or having them ask you questions, and then role modeling. I think just hearing the different responses from people can be very eye-opening for other people. It just lets them know that, hey, that you're not alone, that other people are going through some stuff too. And it just, I think it helps just to connect people in general. So that's something that's on my list of things to do probably for this next week, is to get a lot of these questions up on my website. So you can, I think I'll see if I'll be able to put it to where you can print it out. I'm not sure if I know how to do that, but I'll see. If not, you can copy and paste and put it into a Word document. So this, Stephanie asks, which book is this? If you Google or do an Amazon search for Dana Morningstar on Amazon, there's two versions of this book. So this is called the Insight Journal. And there is the blue journal is the 3-year journal. And then the orangish one is the 1-year journal. So it just depends. Like if you want more space to write, and every day has 2 questions. So, like for example, like the 1-year journal, there's one question that is a different question every day at the top. And then at the bottom asks you, what was a notable or aha moment from today and why? So that second question repeats 7 days a week. But then the first question rotates. So there's just more space to write at the in the 1-year journal. But then the 3-year journal, so then you've got a space. If you've ever seen a 3-year journal, they're actually kind of fun. It's just a different way of journaling. You go through the book, you start page 1, you go through on every single day, and then you start the book over again on year 2, and then again on year 3. And so it's kind of fun because you can see how your thinking changes over time and kind of what was going on with you on this day last year or 2 years ago. So just kind of fun. Different preferences for different people. But like I said, I'll put the questions on my site. Oh, well, thank you, Michael, for the live stream donation. I appreciate that. And is that a picture of you holding a tiger? What is that? Am I seeing that correctly? There's a very solid chance I need glasses, I will say. Oh, and then I hope you answer. Now I'm really curious to know. Yes, True Seeker absolutely says yes, no interrogations or info gathering, but genuine curiosity. Yeah, absolutely. I think especially with kids, it's that whole concept of kids, people in general, but I think especially kids don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And just having that genuine curiosity of like, how are you doing? like what's going on with you, goes a long, long way. He said, okay, yes, a tiger. It was a tiger. Wow, now I want to hear the story behind that. Siberian tiger. How did that come to be? That's very cool. JJ says, my answer to a lot of these questions would be really bad and depressing. I get that. However, I think the benefit of this, especially with like the 3-year version, is you can see how much you've grown. That was another strategy in the other book. I think I meant to read it, but I didn't, was to create like either a video journal or a written journal about what's going on, because that's the thing, like we're so close to ourselves that you can't, it's really hard to kind of have that distance and that perspective to see how far you've come, because you're in yourself every day, right? Like you're in your own body, so you don't see it. And but the reality is, like every moment of every single day, like you're growing, you're changing, you're healing, even though it doesn't feel like it. You really are. Sort of like when you see a kid, right? And they're 8 years old or whatever, and then you see them 2 years later and you're like, what happened? Like it's just, you're blown away by how much they've changed. And then of course people that see the child every day thinks they don't see that because they've been seeing that child every day. It's the same thing with us. Like when we're growing and changing emotionally, um, like we don't see it, those around us don't see it. But if you can somehow kind of keep a journal about that, even if it's a series of videos, which can sometimes be even more telling, that you just keep for yourself, you can see how far you've come. And it's really cool. Okay, let's see here. People are asking Michael about the tiger. They're like, yes, story time. Like, what and how? So speaking of just cool things, I got a letter. I'm trying to think about, I don't want to say too much in case she wasn't okay with me saying too much. I got a letter from a gal last week who, it was weird. She had been on a live stream a little over 2 years ago, and she was in crisis and she was trying to leave that night. And it's just kind of weird. It's one of the questions that just sticks out in my mind because she was so panicked. And I remember this, like I was in Colorado visiting my mom during this live stream. And anyways, so this gal was really panicked, and people in the chat, we were all trying to support her, and people in the chat had come up with a bunch of ideas about how to get out. And so she ended up leaving that night, and she sent me a wonderful letter and a picture of her son. They ended up leaving, they left the state, and they are safe. And so she just wanted to let me know that, just thank you everybody in the chat, and for all of this helped save both of their lives. And she was afraid that her ex said she was in denial about the stuff he was doing, and she just kind of kept justifying it, thinking that he couldn't possibly be doing this to his son. And then she kind of saw some stuff where she could no longer deny it. And she was like, no, this is actually really what's going on. And I've got to get out of here. He's going to kill our son. And so she left. So it's amazing how much everybody, this whole community, we might support somebody or say something to somebody and not realize the impact that actually does make. So I guess just know that, like, there's people out there whose lives have been radically positively changed, and it's the community, it's the support and the guidance and just the validation. So thank you guys for doing that. It's just huge, huge. Such a cool thing. Yeah, Truth Seeker says life saved. Wow, amazing. Yeah, it is. It just really, really is. Oh, well, thank you, Michael. Michael says, Dana does not know, but she has really helped me very much. That's very cool. Well, thank you. I'm beyond thrilled to hear that. It just makes my heart smile. Really, Michael? Okay, so Michael is a wildlife artist. So animals are his life. How cool is that? See, now talk about living your dream and kind of going down the path less traveled. I just think that's so cool that that's such a different career, and I would imagine there's probably a lot of people out there that weren't supportive of that. So I think it's awesome that you went for it and that you're doing that and that you're living a life that you love. That's just powerful. That's a huge success, Jack. He says, I bought a house again. Yay. After my ex ruined my finances and said I'd never be able to get another mortgage at my age. I was homeless for a year. That is so cool. Congratulations. What a huge victory. Huge victory. I just hope that you enjoy every single square inch of that house. I will. Michael says, please look me up. I would like to send you a print titled Dear Innocence. You will understand. Okay, because I have the memory of a goldfish, let me put your name in here so I can do that after we end this. Very cool. Manju, real quick, and then we'll get to do our guided meditation thing. Get grounded and then call it a night. Manju says, does anyone here feel we can become emotionally healthy and mentally? I absolutely do. Yes, with every ounce of my being. And I've mentioned this before, and I'm sure you've heard me talk about this before. I really fully believe that in order for a person to be fully healthy emotionally and psychologically, they have to go through the fire of something like this. I just don't think it's possible any other way. It's easy for a person to grow up in a fully supportive, wonderful, environment, but that only lasts for so long, right? Like real world isn't that way. So even if a person has a wonderful childhood, the real life is harsh. And everybody thinks everybody thinks that they have healthy boundaries and that they make good decisions until it's shown that they don't. So the benefit, and I think the beauty of these types of situations is that it can reveal so much about like kind of who we are, and there's just so much that we can dig out of this. Um, just so many different understandings and lessons, and make work towards our highest and greatest good. So, and you've probably heard me talk about this before, but there's a concept out there called post-traumatic growth. And that really can happen on the flip side of post-traumatic stress. So when a person goes through something that's really incredibly traumatic, the previous thought with psychology was, let's get a person back up to the baseline, back up to their level of normal. Post-traumatic growth, which I love this, blows that idea out of the water. And it's like, why get a person back up to where they were? Maybe where they were wasn't that healthy to begin with. Like, why not have just a radical, tremendous amount of growth happen? And like we've been talking about all night, there's so much power in having your life blown apart. You're really kind of at this sacred window of time where everything is blown apart. You're intentionally able to rebuild your life brick by brick, consciously, with all of these pieces that you want in your life, all the people that you want. You're consciously thinking about everything in your life, and you're building up a life that you love. That only happens if your life has been blown apart. Normal people who don't go through trauma like this they'll never do it, because it's who would willingly, blow up their life? Like, it's too painful. People wouldn't ever want to do that. So yeah, there's so much good that can come from this. Yes, I agree, Manju. She says, I want to have abuse talks in schools. This stuff is important to learn about and to know about. Yep. Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah, Cynthia says, post-traumatic growth. I do believe in it. Oh, yes, I do too. Absolutely. Absolutely. And and it does take a bit, but like when you're on the other side of this and you really are starting to build up a life that you love, and you're just so much more in tune with like yourself and other people, and your eyes are like really wide open for the first time ever. And you're kind of past that point of needing other people to understand or get validated, and like you're so grounded in yourself that what you think and how you feel and who you are, and you're not looking to other people to be okay with that. Like, you're just kind of who you are, and you're confident in your decisions, and you don't need other people. Like, it's great if they support that, but then you're also okay if they don't. um, and you just find there's such a level of like inner peace that comes from that, because you're just living a life of purpose, on purpose. And it's just it's just so cool. Like, you just fully come into your own. It's I really feel, being on the other side of all of this, and I never thought I would get here. I didn't even know this place like here existed. It took a lot of It was sort of like I was just kind of following, that whole saying of, if you find yourself walking through hell, just keep walking. Like, that's what I was doing. I didn't realize that there was all of this over here. I just knew I couldn't stay where I was because I was in so much pain. And so I just kind of kept falling, like, I've got to be able to use this for my highest and greatest good. I'm not even sure what that means. I don't know how to not have this ruin my life. I'm pretty sure my life is ruined. I just kept walking. I'm like, I've got to just keep walking towards using this for my highest and greatest good, squeezing out any little thing that I can, transmuting all of that energy, all of that anger, all of that rage, pouring it into positive things, small and large, any chance I get, and just putting that energy into something positive. Like, that's how that stuff comes about. Renee says, Dana, any advice for those of us who might have a narcissistic child who's 15? Well, I think first and foremost, that level of like narcissism, the job of a teenager is to push boundaries. It's part of growing up and becoming themselves and figuring out who they are. And then your job as a parent is to hold boundaries. So you're kind of going to just be at an impasse until they move out. So I think understanding that tension will be there until they're out of the house. I would start talking to them. That level of like narcissism and self-absorption and, that whole teen angst, nobody understands me. It's all about me and all the drama that I'm going through, that stuff. It's a very normal stage in development. It's obnoxious, but it's normal. And most kids tend to grow out of it. As far as like developing empathy, developing compassion, getting out of their own stuff, having conversations about that, potentially talking about like volunteering or even making that just a thing that you guys do in your house, teaching compassion, role modeling goes a long way with that kind of stuff. Having consequences of like, this is how we treat each other in this house, and this is how we don't treat each other in this house. And I expect you to treat me this way. And I in turn will treat you the same. Like we don't call names, we don't yell, we don't hit, we don't steal. These are the things that we don't do in this house. So if you've got an issue, it's okay for you to be frustrated. It's okay for you to be angry, but it's not okay for you to be cruel. So let's talk about stuff and really role modeling. And I would spell it out like that. It's okay for you to be frustrated. It's okay for you to be angry. Not okay for you to be hateful or cruel. So let's talk about this. Like, what's going on? Yeah, empathy. I mean, being around animals, being around sometimes like special needs children, volunteering at a soup kitchen, just, yeah, like it gives a person perspective for one. And then it also just teaches them like there's a whole big world out there that does not revolve around you. And yeah. And JJ says, anything that gets us to a higher vibration. I realize my vibes are horrible and I have to be positive. I'm just having a bad day or a week, so I'm more negative than I'm capable of. Well, I think honestly, even recognizing that is a huge thing. And so, okay, yeah. If you're like, you know what, I've been incredibly negative lately and just really, I just want my thinking to change just for my own sanity. Like, I just don't like feeling like this all the time. Then making a concerted effort to do something different of like, okay, I'm going to spend some time making myself feel good. But I think here's the catch to that. You have to kind of know what makes you feel good. So like I'd mentioned before, possibly documentaries, comedies, whatever kind of comedies that you enjoy. What feels good to you? Like what helps you to get more on that side of the spectrum, like where you're positive, and this isn't to say that you need to force positivity, but if you're trying to get yourself feeling good, it helps to really understand yourself to the point where you're like, okay, I know what makes me feel good. Like I said, my brother, what makes him feel good and what makes me feel good are two very different things. I wish I had an interest in the gym. I just, he has a bad day, he goes and takes it out at the gym. And, I have a bad day and I'm probably going to go eat some chocolate cake. And that's not the way that I want to handle things. I'd much rather develop the ability to, to go, and it just takes practice, right? Like I could develop that coping strategy. I don't know, for whatever reason I don't. So but knowing what makes you feel good. My brother loves going to the gym. For me, it's like pulling teeth. I love to write. That's kind of how I get my stuff out. Actually, that's probably a more accurate example. On a more regular basis, I write every single day. My brother's dyslexic. He hates writing. So that's not how he handles things. Just kind of knowing yourself and knowing what makes you feel good and how you process stuff is huge. Okay, let's see. Truth Seekers talking about Jenna Marbles, her channel. Yes, I agree. I think she's so cute. She makes me laugh too. Her dogs are so stinking cute. They make me laugh. She just did a video the other day, and I don't watch a lot of her videos. Every now and again I do, but she did one where her dog picked out her makeup, and it was hilarious. And actually, she looked really good in the end. But it was just one of those things where you're like, yeah, I could. I don't know. It was just so funny, just so bizarre and random, but so cute. Like if you're an animal lover, you're like, I could totally see myself doing something weird like that on like a rainy day when you're totally bored. It was cute. Oh, well, thank you, Trip, for the live stream donation. It says, hope this helps with the tea. Yes, good deal. I know that was so sad. I hated throwing away. I had like 3 boxes of that tea that I couldn't take with me. But now I have 3 more boxes of tea. Oh, that stuff is so good. Let's see. I think we are at that point. Oh, there's just so many good comments in here in this chat. Okay, but we'll call it a night. I know we're over on time. So I guess let's take a few moments. This is the kind of wind down part of the live stream that we always do. So for the next 10 minutes or so, just allowing yourself to be in the moment and to just relax. So if you're in a chair or if you're lying down, allowing yourself just get comfortable. Whatever that might mean to you. Taking in some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. With each breath, allowing that breath to fill up more and more of your lungs. Letting that breath get deeper and deeper. And perhaps even noticing how shallow we tend to breathe. So intentionally allowing these breaths to completely fill up every lobe in your lungs. That healing, restorative oxygen. Noticing what it feels like to actually take some deep breaths. Being fully present in this moment. Knowing that at this very moment that you are safe and that it's okay to put down or to release any emotions that you would like. If there's any anger or fear or tension, anxiety, depression that you've been carrying around, perhaps visualize it like a backpack that you take off and you set down next to you, realizing that you are in control and that you can pick it back up at any time that you feel that you would like to or that you need to. Just noticing how you feel, setting those emotions down next to you, realizing that you're still safe even though you're not carrying them, that you are here, that you are in this moment, and that you are safe. And let's just breathe, just be here in this moment. Making this present moment your friend, realizing that you will never look back at this point in your life and think to yourself that you wish you would have worried about things more. That you're doing the best that you can do, and then you're going to let the rest go. Stuff is all going to get resolved in its own way and in its own time. You are here, and you are now, and you are safe. Bringing your attention to the top of your forehead, let's slowly progress down and relax all of your muscles from the tip of your head to the bottom of your toes. Relaxing your forehead and your eyes, your cheeks, your jaw. Letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth. Letting your jaw fall open. Feeling what it feels like to have your face completely relaxed, to have all of that tension gone. Relaxing your neck and your shoulders. Your chest, potentially rolling your shoulders back, just allowing your chest to open up. Realizing that you are safe, that it's okay. Relaxing your arms, allowing them to fall heavy by your sides. Relaxing your hands and your fingers. Allowing them to just fall heavy. Really noticing what it feels like to just have your shoulders and your arms relax. Relaxing your stomach and your hips. Allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable. Relaxing your thighs, your knees, your calves, your feet and your toes, allowing your feet to fall in whatever position is the most comfortable. Now noticing if there's any areas of your body that you're still holding any tension in. And let's do 7 more deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. Sending those breaths to any areas that you're holding on to tension and allowing that oxygen to get into those muscles and releasing those knots. And let's do that now. Now let's take some time to be thankful and grateful for everything that is going right in our lives, no matter how small. Everything that you might be grateful for. Perhaps it's the health that you do have. Perhaps it's for a warm summer day. Perhaps it's for a hot, clean shower or a comfortable bed to sleep in, or for how amazing the internet is, that we just have so many different things that we can watch and learn about. So take some time and think about some things that you're grateful for. And let's do that now for the next 7 breaths. Now come on back. And I have one more exercise for you. I'd like for you to visualize a magnificent, sparkling silver waterfall. Now visualize yourself walking slowly through this waterfall. And as all of that water hits you, it just washes away any stress, any negativity that you might be holding or experiencing. And as you come out on the other side of that waterfall, just notice how clean and rejuvenated you feel. And allow yourself to just take in that feeling. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and come on back. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys and just all of the conversation and the support that everybody gives each other in the chat, and just all of it is just awesome. Just restores my faith in humanity and just makes my heart smile. So thank you guys for being you. And I will see you next week. Angie and I have our chat on Tuesdays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you can't make it to that, then I'll see you at the live stream Wednesday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that said, have a wonderful rest of your week. Lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. I'll see you guys soon. Okay, good night.